Well, on Wednesday, I predict you'll either be very happy or deeply depressed. A list of new MPs will be handed over to the National Assembly. What we do know is the cabinet will be smaller. That's the promise anyway. But who will stay and who will go? And what is it that makes the next appointees effective or utterly useless? Should choosing our politicians boil down to their age and education? Let's ask someone who knows, former cabinet minister, now a director of the School of Leadership at the University of Johannesburg, Sydney Mufamadi, and political analyst and scholar Sam Khoma. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
Mufamadi, right, this list, we're pondering it. We should know a little bit more tomorrow, hopefully. Tell us what the considerations are when choosing the MPs that go on the list and those that don't make it. Why does that happen?
Well, there are many things that obviously have to be taken into account when you are looking for public representatives. Firstly, you want people who are committed to serve their country and the people. In the context of South Africa...
So does that immediately eliminate a few on the list?
I have not really studied all these lists. I mean, there are 48 parties. Yeah, you need people who are familiar with the historiography of the struggle for change in South Africa, who know exactly what that struggle was about, because then they will know what the aspirations of the people are. But more importantly, they must know how the world works, how it should work, and therefore how they should then have the knowledge and the skill to envision an alternative to what we have. As you know, parties say, we are promising you a better life.
Do you think the Integrity Commission obviously will be taking note of that, and they have other factors? What do you think is going to be playing out?
Yeah, obviously the NEC has to take into account the recommendations of the Integrity Commission, just like they did when the VBS scandal came to the fore. They were able to take a bold and decisive decision in asking those implicated officials of the ANC, especially in Limpopo province, to step aside. So we hope that this time around, those who are being implicated, especially in state capture allegations, will not make it to the cabinet. They may happen to be deployed in some of the portfolio committees in parliament or become public representatives outside cabinet. So my sense is that the president, he seems to have determination to renew governance systems and also to put emphasis on integrity of the people who happen to be appointed as ministers in his cabinet.
You say NEC, obviously the tripartite alliance is going to play a role, and hopefully the voice of the voters. I mean, people have spoken out. Is that taken into consideration?
Well, the voice of the voters matters. The collective voice of the voters matters. But then what it means, therefore, is that you need to have a politically educated public opinion. Now, in this country, we introduced a system of government which is participatory, which envisions that from time to time, particularly at local government level, public representatives will hold consultative meetings with the population. That ought to raise their level of consciousness about matters of governance that will help guide the choices they make during election time.
Okay, so obviously that's going to make a dramatic impact, and hopefully we'll get more people to the polls. But let's talk about education. I mean, you're highly educated. Do you think that's an important factor when it comes to the people who are going to be in Parliament?
A very important consideration. Jane, remember the first administration of the late Nelson Mandela. 90% of those ministers had university qualifications Some they had PhDs. Dr. Bengu, who served as a Minister for Education, the late Professor Kada Asmal. You also had Dr. Penel Maduna, Meg Maharaj, though the limitation is that they were largely dominated by men, but there was a consideration by the president then. And if you look at the Mbeki administration, he also built on the foundation which was laid by Nelson Mandela. And Dr. Mufamadi can attest to that. You had Dr. Phumzile Mlambo Ngcuka, who was the deputy president. You also had the late Dr. I.V. Matsipe Kasaburi, heading telecommunications.
And now we've got Naledi Pandor. She's just been, awarded her PhD in education, currently Minister of Higher Education.
But I think it must be borne in mind that some of the people we are referring to as Dr. this, that and the other were not doctors when they came into government.
And that kind of makes it
more
dangerous.
So no, not at all. Democracy does not always give you people who are ready for the task.
But do we have the people ready now?
Yeah, I'm saying.
What's that readiness?
I'm saying it does not always give you people who are ready for the task. When we came into government in 1994, we were not coming from the opposition benches. We were coming from the trenches of struggle. What is important for us as a society, we must cultivate this culture of lifelong learning. So that you know that personal development is critical for somebody who ascends to a position of service. Am I equal to the task? And if I am not, what is it that I need to do to be equal to the task? Which means even our institutions of higher learning must also position themselves by way of expanding access to higher education to people sometimes who did not have this opportunity to go to school. When I came into government, I did not have matric because I was denied the opportunity to acquire that level of qualification.
Talking of opportunities, what about women? Right, so 50% on the ANC list. I'm just wondering how, when the lists are put together, how women are viewed. I mean, if you look at the ANC list, the majority of women are at the bottom, so it sort of takes away some of their credibility, I should imagine. The EFF, I think after the top three, you've got them flipping between male, female. Does that make a statement? Does that reach out?
Yeah, I think I'm encouraged by the decision which was taken by the NEC yesterday to say where there is a female premier, the speaker should also be female. And where there is also a male premier, the consideration in terms of composition of the Provincial Executive Council, 60% should be female. So I think the ANC does pay attention to the issue of gender parity or gender representation within the government structures. And that is also in line with their Polokwane resolution to ensure that there's 50-50 gender representation in the government structures. And that's the reason currently there is a debate about who should then become the deputy president to Cyril Ramaphosa. And we've seen in the newspaper reports, there are now some names that have been bandied around. So we'll see how it pans out, because that is in line with their resolution in Polokwane.
Well, good if it goes through. What about age? I know there's quite a bit of talk about Jeff Radebe saying he shouldn't be back in the cabinet again, the age factor. I mean, does that sort of thing go against a politician? I mean, if you look at some of the politicians around the world who are just never going to leave, is it?
Well, I think we must stay at the level of principles rather than reduce it to individuals. What we need in our society, and I think this is what you need the world over, it's ongoing, dynamic, intergenerational interaction. There's a lot that those who have been around can offer to the emerging young, dynamic leaders that are coming through. But the question is whether they necessarily have to sit in parliament or in cabinet to be able to be of service to their country. And I'm saying you don't have an answer for all cases which is the one and only correct answer. But very important that young people must come into the high table of political decision-making. For obvious reasons, they constitute the majority section of our population, and the future belongs to them.
Well, let's leave it there, and I agree, the future does belong to the youth, and it's all about education, education, education. Sydney Mufamadi and Sam Khoma, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pollsters have a knack of getting it wrong when it comes to, well, polling. No one predicted Donald Trump's victory, and some of our main pollsters were way off the mark. Should we ditch our reliance on them altogether? And then we explode the myth of Monday heart attacks.